Hello, everybody. Welcome to another stream of Figure Drawing, the Art Lounge Alley. I am your host, and I'm going to continue on with a project that I've been working on for a while now. It's a study of this amazing painter, one of my favorite painters, actually, Jacques-Louis David. The painting is called The Death of Socrates. And I'm going to show you what it is. So this is the original. It's an amazing painting. It's incredibly beautiful, especially if you're seeing it live, if you're seeing it in person. And you guys can check that out if you're in New York, if you're familiar with the Met. If you're not, get familiar with the Met, especially if you're into art. It has the most incredible collection of paintings, I'm going to say. There's been a bunch of museums that I've visited in other countries, in other states, and I'm going to say the Met, hands down, has some of the best collections. How they keep the paintings, not just paintings, actually, sculptures as well. There's like the Egyptian section. There's all sorts of sections. It is one of the best museums in the world, I'm going to say. I absolutely love it. I went there several times, actually. Something that I would like to share with you guys is a painting that not a painting, a drawing that I did there. And that's something that you can do as well. Just going to show you real quick something that I did a while ago. This is it. So I just went over there. I had my sketchbook with me, and I was able to just stand there and draw it. Of course, I had to take breaks in between, just kind of sit down and rest a little bit, but I was able to do it, and I think you guys can too. You know, if you're intermediate especially, just go out and draw. You know, it's an experience to be immersed in the painting. The environment is great. You know, there's so much buzz going on, and people are really into art. You know, they're there because they really appreciate it. Of course, there's people who are there just because they are in some way forced to do it, you know, or it's just something that they kind of do here and there. But just the environment overall, it's great. So I really do encourage you guys to go out there. You could, if you're a painter, you could even set up through their program. They have a program that allows you to get a license to sit, like you could bring your easel, you could sit and paint. In fact, you'll find a lot of painters there as well. They set up shop over there and they just sit and paint for hours. So it's a real awesome environment. The building itself is incredible. But yeah, just being immersed in that place is inspiring. You know, there's so much to see. Every time I go over there and every time I go to the painting section, I never get through completely. There's always something that catches my attention. Second time I went there, I saw something different in the same painting that I've seen before. So it's limitless almost. There's infinite amount of things to see. There's infinite amount of things to interpret, you know. And that's something that I've talked about before, which is interpretation. You know, when you're looking at something, try to also invoke your own imagination, you know, invoke your own thoughts on like what it is, or what it could be, and just kind of run with your own imagination. You know, it's also great to understand it for what it is, but I'm just pointing out that that's not the only opportunity with it. It's fun. It's something cool. You know, it's an activity. It's something to look at. So just get lost in it and come up with all sorts of things. You know, look at it and come up with a story. Come up with an symbolism that you see in it, and so on and so forth. Like really get into it. So yeah, there's just like limitless amount of things to be immersed in over there, and I highly encourage you guys to do it. So the painting, this painting right here, is something at the Met, and you could see it. It's at the beginning, I want to say. I don't know if it still is, but it's a huge painting. There's so much detail to it, and it's something that I talk about very often. Is you're in the presence of something from the 1800s. Like, this painting was done in the 1800s, if not the late 1700s. It was during the time of the French Revolution, so it's probably like late 1700s, I'm gonna say. But the painting is huge, and you're in the presence of that. You're in the presence of that time period, and because this person that no longer exists, that existed about 300 years ago, you know, it's you're kind of like in the same space together, because the brushstrokes of that person are still present. They're present on that painting. So they're kind of living on. You know, they're still existing in modern day. There's an essence of them. There's a part of them that still is present, you know. So the emotions that they felt, the painted characters, the emotions that they felt during their time period, you know, that it's still present in the painting. And I think that's one of the unique things about paintings, and the unique things about each and every artist is their way of making lines, what was swimming around their head, what emotions they were going through, what sort of experiences they were going through, what sort of things were happening in their life at that time. It all kind of comes out onto the painting, you know. And I think for Jacques-Louis David, he was actually, I think he had a speech impediment or something of that sort. Let me just look that up real quick. Either that or he was deaf, but I don't remember. Let me just look up real quick to make this more accurate. Hoping it's going to tell me right at the beginning. Formative years. So he definitely didn't have a great childhood, that's for one. After 4 failures in the official competitions of years of discouragement that included an attempt of suicide by the Stoic method of avoiding food, he finally obtained in 1774 the Prix de Rome government scholarship that not only provided stay in Italy, but practically guaranteed lucrative commissions in France. And then since then he started making a bunch of money. But where does it I remember him talking about, or that being said about him. Let me just look up another article real quick. Was it early life? Yeah, he had a facial tumor that impeded his speech, and he was always preoccupied with drawing. So basically, I think in a lot of ways that just kind of pushed him to be exceptional, you know, exceptional at painting, knowing that he had this other thing that was kind of making his life miserable, obviously. Yeah, and it kind of, I'm sure it gave him a lot of frustration. So in some ways, it maybe have been one of the reasons why he was so incredible at painting. He spent so much time painting, considering all this other stuff that was kind of blocking him from having quote-unquote normal life. But yeah, as you could see, like each painter kind of because of what's going on with them circumstantially, what's going on with them mentally, physically, whatever it is, it pours out into their art. And I think that's incredible. That's again, that's like a way for them to still exist in modern day. You know, you go into that room and you're seeing the brush strokes that are made by the painter and this entire piece that they've created, and it's a pretty big painting. Can't really remember the exact size of the exact size of it, but let me see if the dimensions are even displayed here. No, it's just giving me like pixel size of the piece itself, but not. Oh, maybe this is it. So I'm just gonna quickly convert it. (51 by 77 inches). Let me convert that into feet and give you guys a better idea. I'm gonna say it's bigger than that. It's basically saying it's like 4 by 6 feet. I think it was a lot bigger than that. But anyways, it's a huge painting, and it's just something to marvel at, you know. And there's other works that are done by Jacques-Louis David that are present there. Highly encourage you guys to check those out. There's a room that is also dedicated to who, unfortunately, I recently found out was also pro-capitalism, which is Dali. And it kind of doesn't surprise me. He did come from money. So I think in some ways that also, and like his parents and his environment was kind of just pushing him in that direction. But I also don't think that at the time it was seen yet for what capitalism will turn into. You know, I don't think that people were aware of it yet because it was still fairly new concept, I'm going to say, to the general public, because it's existed for eons. You know, that's the idea itself existed for a very long time. So I think just during the time of the Industrial Revolution, it became even more apparent and people started to view it as like a viable monetary system. So I don't think that they were able to predict it to be as toxic and Nazi backing as it is now. Or maybe he wasn't even in that deep to really even consider that an option. There are people who just think of things superficially, and that's probably where it ends for them. They don't think about like the extent of how far and how terrible things can get. So it kind of put me off. You know, he was an artist that I actually did like. I liked his work. I thought it was really interesting. There's something really interesting visually for it. But knowing that and considering all this stuff, I'm just like, ugh, that sucks. You know, I'm not really happy about that idea. But anyways, but I mean, to argue that, you know, that something I was talking about before, I'm just going to start painting. What I was talking about before, you know, the whole Dada movement, for those of you who missed it, unfortunately, yesterday was another fiasco with this like server connection issue. So the episode was lost. Not completely, because I did upload it to YouTube. So if you guys want to check out the special intro from yesterday, it's absolutely worth it. It's a really cool one about surrealism. I talk about surrealism. I talk about Dadaism, which is what surrealism stems from. It stems from Dadaism. And that's something that started in 1910 as not only an artistic movement, not only as a revolutionary artistic movement for those who are for artists, it was also a movement that was political. It was for people who were anarchists and communists and socialists, and it was this like space basically for people who share those values to come together, talk about stuff. And a lot of it was people speaking against capitalism and the bourgeois culture that came from it, and all the values that stemmed from capitalism. So I think that give me a second. Yeah, there was a lot about it, and in fact it came from a lot of artists, a lot of amazing artists as well. And you guys can check those pieces out by heading over to the YouTube channel and checking out the most recent upload. It's the special stream is called The Bellies. It's a short animation done by Philip Grammatikopoulos, if I'm saying it right. It's a really interesting last name. I really like it. Grammatikopoulos. It's a tongue twister. Grammatikopoulos. Am I saying it right? Grammatikopoulos. Just gonna check real quick. But you guys are gonna see The Bellies as the title for that special intro, and yeah, basically he was just part of that movement. He was part of the Surrealist movement, and the Surrealist movement was basically for people who were pro right-wing, pro socialism, pro anarchism. It was that sort of movement. So I'm just kind of surprised that him being a surrealist, that he was actually supportive. I guess that's something that I have to dig deeper and find out, to what extent he actually believed that, if it's actually true, or if that was like a guise, he wasn't really pro that. I can't imagine him being in a circle of people who consider themselves actually surrealists, following this concept of it being like a culture against capitalism and still supporting it and saying that it's right, and having people around him being like, oh, I guess that's fine. I just don't see that happening. But again, I probably just have to do some digging and really find out what went down during that time. But yeah, that animation it's very cool. It's very interesting. It has this Art Deco style to it as well. That's something that I'm going to be talking about at some point in the future. It was also a movement as well, and it was during that period. I'm going to say it's during the World War I period where it really popped up. But something that's frustrating about all this stuff is that a lot of people see this sort of thing as like some sort of truth of the matter. People who support wars or whatever, they want to justify it by saying that that's where innovation really came from. Having this sort of strife and having this sort of insanity basically is what inspired that sort of thing. And I couldn't disagree more. I don't think that art comes from, or quality art comes from misery, or comes from the threat of death and all this other stuff. That's not a connection. I think that's just something that that happens simultaneously, or maybe in response to, but it's not limited to just that sort of environment in order to bring about ideas and concepts. I think it would be the opposite. If people lived happier lives, if they lived more prosperous lives, we would probably see even more and better work, because people wouldn't be pressed for such awful things where they have to choose their time between this or that, for the sake of some deranged idiot's entertainment. We could just spend time on creating stuff, and building things, and not have to worry about basic living conditions. And I think that would bring about even more prosperity, more ideas, more innovation. People are thinking clearer. So it's just an excuse. Once again, it's just a front by capitalists to encourage those environments, because they profit from all that stuff. They profit immensely from all of it. And in fact, there's part of my theory is that a lot of the stuff that happened during that time period was fueled by these right-wingers all over the world. It's not just in the States that there are right-wingers. As you guys could see, that it's happening in Italy, it's happening in India, it's happening in, well, obviously China is like a dictatorship. It's happening in France. There's a bunch of places that have these same sort of personalities, the same sort of logic and reason towards everything, the authoritarian types. So it's not a religion thing. It's not a nationality that has certain behaviors. It's just a behavior that, again, I believe stems from upbringing, that stems from not just genetics, but values that are being taught, what kind of values have been passed down to them. And a lot of these authoritarian values come from people who are brats, people who weren't taught limitations, who always got what they wanted from their parents, who manipulated their parents, and figured out, I could manipulate my parents and I could get all this stuff, and I could get this, that, and the other. Never earned accountability, because they were never held responsible for anything, because they knew how to throw temper tantrums, like you're seeing now with a lot of these nut jobs. You tell them to wear a mask, they start screaming freedom of choice. Then when it comes to freedom of choice, they start talking about what was their slogan? Pro-life. So complete opposite. First they wanted pro-choice when people were trying to save lives. Then when people were trying to save lives, they're talking about pro-choice. When people were talking about pro-choice, they were talking about pro-life. So they just switch things up according to how they feel, according to how much responsibility that's put on them. They throw temper tantrums, right? So they were just shouting, screaming, slamming things, saying they weren't going to wear a mask when the pandemic hit. And then they started to tell people that they were pro-life when the idea of abortion came about and women's choice of how to use their own bodies. So brats, basically, it's party of where brats go. People who never want any accountability and will throw temper tantrums, lie, manipulate, steal, try to kill people even, just so that they don't have to do what is told for them to do. They only are the ones who are telling people what to do. It's an intense mental disorder. It's a superiority complex is a mental disorder. It's not a fun jabbing term. It's not a term people just use like, oh, you're stupid. It's an actual mental disorder. It's something that causes people to act insane and do insane things and say insane things as well. Things that really jeopardize a lot of stuff, like that becomes fatal. So as I was mentioning, it's something that happens all around the world. You have these personalities all around the world. So my point of view on it is that it's just having to do with that sort of upbringing. And I think there are multiple avenues to it. I don't think it only comes from people with a lot of money. It just comes from how they were raised. So a person with, let's say, no money can raise somebody like that as well, because they don't ever teach them any boundaries or hold them accountable to respect other people's boundaries. Or, the parents themselves don't have any boundaries, and the kid learns that. How the parents treat the kid, they end up treating other people that way. So just again to point out how it's not just one way of going about it. It's not just one way of having or developing this mental disorder. There's multiple avenues to it, and it all stems to like having zero accountability or respecting any boundaries. And it's this attitude of like my way or the highway. Not about rationality, not about reason, not about empathy or any sort of values or goals towards making things better. It's how do I escape any sort of accountability or responsibility? And those same people are the ones who are pro-capitalism. So isn't it kind of ironic, right? And isn't it kind of convenient, that the same type of people with that kind of attitude are the ones who are supporting a system that hates any form of accountability? That entire platform is based on their disorder. That entire like monetary system. Don't meddle, don't tell me how to run my business. If I want to sex traffic kids, we should be able to do that. Like, it's insane. It's an insane system. So if they don't want anybody meddling, if they don't want anybody to like, find out like, hey, this is what you're doing with your business, we're shutting it down. That's the sort of stuff that ends up being bred. That's the sort of stuff that is enabled, the sex trafficking of kids and drug trafficking and all that other stuff. If they don't want anybody to meddle, they're free to do that stuff. If there are no repercussions for what kind of business and how it's being run, of course that's going to be there. There's a bunch of insane people who are then enabled through that system. And again, those same people are going to be like, I don't care. It doesn't concern me. Who cares? It's not my problem. It's not, I'm not going to be accountable for that. I'm not going to be held accountable for any of this. So it's just the party of the brats that happens to be all over the world. And once again, it just points out nothing to do with skin color, nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with geographical location, and everything to do with upbringing and values and what they're taught. And that's what we have to push for, accountability. They absolutely detest it. And it's not even about doing things that they detest. It's doing things that are causing problems, are causing all these insane things to happen that are escalating, getting worse and worse, becoming unsustainable, making everybody miserable. Why? Because a bunch of brats don't want to take accountability, they don't want to be held responsible for anything that they're doing. It doesn't seem right. So it's beyond them. It's just this idea of what is right and wrong. It's beyond doing things that they don't like. It's just about running a system and running a functioning, progressive, and flourishing society. That's what the idea is about. Whereas for them, it's just spite. It's don't tell me what to do. And that's pretty much where it starts and ends. I get to do whatever I want, and that's it. That's all where it starts and ends with them. Anything else that they pretend to be backing is all contradicted. As I mentioned, they were talking about pro-life when they were told to wear masks. But when it came down to baby formula, they supported politicians who said no. If they're pro-life, how can they starve a bunch of babies out of this spite? That's a sickness. That's a mental disorder. These people are disgustingly insane to do that. To reject nutrition to a bunch of babies. How mentally insane are you? And it's repulsive. You can't have people like that making any sort of decisions at all. You got to get them out. I'm absolutely appalled by it. And this is one of the reasons, y'all, why I talk about it so often, because you should be as outraged as I am. You should be as upset about all this. If you have a conscience, if you have a soul, basically, you should be as outraged about all this stuff as I am, and take action. We got to protest. We got to get these people the fuck out, so that these kind of atrocities don't continue, and they don't just get to sit there reveling in their insane narcissism. So talk about it with your friends. Talk about it with people. Collective action is now. We got to do stuff now. Because they're not going to stop it. They're not going to just grow a conscience or drop this insane behavior. Forget it. And people have thought about that or hoped for it, in the 60s with hippies and their approach of being really understandable and being kind and nice, and oh well, we gotta compromise with them. Where has it led? It led to this. It led to them knowing that, oh, these people, again, Nazi values, superior, inferior. They just looked at that as an opportunity to stomp their way through. So they're weak, right? That's what that mental disorder looks at kindness as weakness. So it escalated. It escalated to this point. There were no boundaries for them. Nobody to check them and say, you're insane. Get the fuck out. Stop making any political decisions. You're not qualified. And it got worse and worse and worse until a killer virus is spread, until more wars are started. None of this stuff, none of it happened overnight. It all just escalated from decade to decade to decade to eventually exploding into all this stuff. Part of me wants to move on to the next figure and just really start fleshing it out. I wanted to start maybe on this guy right here. And see how far I could take it. I'm probably going to do that. I think my approach is going to be just to work all around. I'm just going to keep building and developing more detail everywhere, not going into its full potential just yet, just getting everything rendered, and then doing another layer of refinement on top of it, and then another layer of refinement on top of the entire painting. As opposed to what I'm doing right now, which is trying to perfect one figure to the T, and then move on to the next figure and do the same thing. You know, I think with that, I might get better results, you know, might get faster results to approach it. But yeah, everybody, it's all, and again, they're not gonna just try to make things any better. They're in fact trying to do the opposite. They're trying to make things as difficult as possible so that people won't ruin their profit making schemes. So they're going to press people even more, and if they succeed, they're going to make it even more difficult for anybody to try to overthrow their Nazi regime, basically. Their sociopathic approach to society. They're going to make it even more difficult. I mean, that's what they've been doing over these past few years. That's why all this stuff wasn't addressed for such a long time. And they were able to get somebody who got impeached twice. You know, the entire purpose of it is to get them out of office because they're not qualified. They violated all these things. They were caught in corruption. They were caught in collusion. They were caught in a bunch of different things. And despite that, they were still able to serve their full term. So that's the kind of people that are backing, that are able to go around this, despite, you know, constitutional law. They were able to go around it. So if they could do that, do you really think that they're just gonna like keel over and not do anything? No, they're gonna put more pressure. But what they hate is logic, reason, and accountability. They absolutely detest it. Accountability is their worst enemy. Accountability is the worst enemy of capitalism. Having to say, like, you earn these profits through exploitation, you're gonna be indicted. That's their worst nightmare. And that's absolutely what we should be doing. We should be pushing for that, not because of, in spite of them, it's because of what they're doing. They're creating these insane behaviors. They're stifling progress. They're enabling more Nazism. They're enabling more corruption, more death, more killing. That's why. You know, that's why we should be doing all this stuff that is absolutely going to jeopardize their position. Accountability and making them recognize that it's not them who's in power, it's the people. Without us, no profits. Without the people, they have no workers. They have nobody who's going to generate money for them, nobody who's willing to do anything for their company, and in fact, everybody's against their company. Or a lot of people, let's just say, because of course there's a bunch of people who are crazy and they'll back it. But the majority, the overwhelming majority of people who are rational and realize that they have a responsibility to try to build a better future for not just themselves, but their kids, and to distinguish themselves from Nazis, basically. Like, are you a bystander? Like when the Nazis were throwing Jews in concentration camps and gassing them, there were a bunch of people who were like, well, it doesn't concern me. I don't have anything to do with it, so why should I care? Are you one of those? Because that's just the same thing. That's complicit Nazism. That's complicit Nazis. Those are people who didn't really care just as much as the Nazis didn't care. You know, they're killing innocent people because of some insane idea, some theory. It's crazy behavior. It's like the mental institution let out a bunch of people, and those people ended up just taking politics in. And there's a movie like that, actually. There's a movie, it's a Russian film, has subtitles, and it's called Lunacy, I believe. And it's kind of about that. And it's political satire. You know, it is basically making fun of political systems, saying that it's being run by insane people. You know, so despite it being an interesting film, and the cinematography is also really good. I really enjoyed the cinematography there. The commentary there is very relevant. It's just unfortunate that movies that are made back then are still relevant now. You would think that, 70 years you would see things progress and people becoming more intelligent and more inclusive and more progressive, but instead it's just repeating the same stupid problems. It's enabling insane people. Literally. That's not a jab. As that, throughout this entire stream, everything I was describing describes insane people. But if you guys ever do get a chance to check it out, it's called Lunacy. It's definitely great. I don't mind subtitles, I actually enjoy them. Because I really enjoy films from other cultures, because I think sometimes you get caught up in your own cultures and like Hollywood and all that other stuff, and people kind of get brainwashed out of like normal behavior in some ways, like what it means to be human beings, and they just start emulating a bunch of Hollywood behavior, pretending to be like Hollywood or pretending a lot. And that, I think, also develops into a psychosis as well, where people don't even know what's the difference between real or fake, or what's the difference between pretending and being normal or being a real person, completely losing touch, basically. And but I do like watching these international films because it kind of like snaps you out of it. Though I will say one thing, with social media now being such an international thing, you're seeing things that are done all over the world. I think that ends up also, let's see, this is a specific blue, so I'm gonna test sample it. Oh, it's too blue. Nope. I'm gonna say it's something like that to sample it, and close. But yeah, like because things are international, people are kind of forming this like online culture, and in a lot of ways it is being influenced by like brainwashing capitalist endeavors. So while I do like the idea of people really connecting, I guess in some ways I don't like that certain things are being mixed in, or that capitalism has such a grip internationally. It's kind of what I'm getting at. I think there should be like a nice middle ground, kind of. Where people can connect and relate to each other internationally, but not be concerned with like Hollywood like affairs or whatever, like not converting to that sort of superficial culture. Because I know that a lot of people are like, oh, there's Hollywood and there's all these celebrities and so on and so forth, and they get like sucked into that superficial culture basically. And I would hate to see that happens all over the world everywhere, and people just one conglomeration of like Hollywood culture. That's basically where I'm getting at, because I do like I said, I do like the idea that people are connecting with each other from all over the world and sharing posts and all that stuff. It's just what they're sharing, what their values end up being is kind of like surfing that danger zone of becoming way too catering to like superficial Hollywood culture. Probably gonna go darker there. I feel like it's darker and more orange. Oh, that's an interesting beat. I like it. Well, everybody, it's slowly coming to an end for tonight. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for dealing with a little bit of this like technical issue as I'm still working through it. A lot of this stuff is like server related, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what the issue is there. But I am working on that. Talk about the stuff with your friends. Discuss these things. Like, for example, the idea of AI generated imagery and how that's really causing an issue for a lot of artists, and how it's causing an issue to the artistic endeavor in general. Discuss it with your friends, discuss it with people. We definitely need to have that as an ongoing topic until some resolution comes about. For instance, creating a fund that allows people to contribute, even if it's a small amount of dollars, to eventually be able to hire really good lawyers and sue the shit out of these AI generating companies and app makers for violating all this like copyright infringement, stealing artwork, feeding it, and trying to put people out of business through all this stuff. So we need some excellent we need lawyers, we need to sue them, we need to establish laws. But yeah, talk about it with people, pass along these ideas and messages, discuss it with each other, debate it. I think it's pretty important. So anyways, y'all, thanks for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow, and tomorrow actually is going to be a special intro. I'm going to be continuing Gil Elfgren. This is going to be part 9, I think, for the Twitch stream. So I'm gonna be talking about more of the remaining influences for Gil Elvgren before I show you guys the book itself and really go through all the different decades of Gil Elvgren's work. I'm pretty excited about that. It's going to be tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so make sure you tune back in then. And as always, if you guys enjoy this content, just remember to hit the like and subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow.